Do you remember the good old days when facts made a difference? Welcome to Sick, Bonkers, Dystopian 2021 and a global campaign to vaccinate even the youngest children in spite of the fact that they face a minuscule threat from the virus. Now, the vaccine is fabulous, borderline miraculous for those who risk hospitalisation or death from COVID. But of course, the vaccine doesn't stop you getting COVID and it doesn't stop you transmitting it. Here's the latest data published by the Guardian newspaper. And here's the detail. People who are fully vaccinated against COVID yet catch the virus are just as infectious to others in their household as infected unvaccinated people are. This according to the latest research. So why, in that context, would you jab children? The risk of rare side effects versus the tangible threat of the virus to children appears badly out of kilter. The Hippocratic oath that doctors sign up to is first, do no harm. And surely that is of particular importance when it comes to children. Now, I welcome the vaccine and I'm double jabbed. It's got to be personal choice. But needlessly vaccinating those in the community who face almost no threat from the disease does the vaccine cause no good. This obsession with vaccinating absolutely everybody, in many cases against their will, with NHS workers and care home staff threatened with the sack, well, it defies logic, particularly as we enter an inevitable winter health crisis, as we do every year. And no jab, no job is forced vaccination in all but name. If the disease was so bad or the vaccine so great, you wouldn't have to force it on people. The public know the facts already. But remember, the facts don't matter in 2021. If a truly devastating virus like HIV was airborne and spread via aerosols like COVID, name one person who wouldn't have the jab. They would be queuing around the block. Though COVID can be extremely nasty and is highly dangerous to a small proportion of the population, HIV it is not. This mission of vaccinating absolutely everyone at all cost completely ignores natural immunity that millions of people in this country and around the world already have following their recovery from COVID. And study after study confirms the immunity that they enjoy is higher, better, more robust than among their vaccinated peers. World-renowned virologist Martin Kulldorff has stated that, based upon peer-reviewed data, unvaccinated care home workers who have had COVID and recovered are by far the safest people to be caring for the vulnerable. He says that care homes should be actively recruiting them, not firing them. How ironic that they are now on the dole queue. But remember, the facts don't matter in 2021. And frankly, empathy and common sense don't matter either. Take a look at this absolute horror show from the United States. I urge you to watch this video and not be offended by the footage that you're seeing now. We've been told by the government, by SAGE, that children face almost no risk from COVID. And here we go, vaccinating them. There's talk now of newborns being vaccinated in the long term. Do you want this for your kids? Strange, isn't it? And here's the thing. Concerns about jabbing kids don't just come from me, so don't take my word for it. There are countless respected scientific voices around the world who agree. Or what about the JCVI, the agency that advised the government on vaccines, who told the government not to jab the under-16s, but they've done it anyway. Remember, the facts don't matter in 2021. What about COVID cases? The Mail newspaper are reporting that daily coronavirus cases have fallen again. That's right, folks, they've fallen again. You wouldn't know that from watching some of our rivals elsewhere. They have fallen. And as one of the country's top COVID advisors, Professor Tim Spector, has said, well, he's argued that Britain was now over the last great peak of the pandemic. But that's not the media narrative, is it? The Department of Health said there were just over 37,000 infections in the last 24 hours, a drop of 6.5% compared to figures from last Thursday. It marks the 11th time in 12 days that cases have fallen week on week, and comes as separate official data suggests infection rates are dropping in 9 out of 10 local authorities. Well, this is so inconvenient, isn't it? Because medics, opposition politicians, SAGE members and others have been calling for face coverings, social distancing and work from home orders for weeks now. Except that Treasury officials have calculated that those measures, supposedly low-level measures, would cost the British economy 18 billion quid, sinking Britain further into the red. After Freedom Day, which was described as reckless by Sir Keir Starmer, cases fell. No apology, no retraction. The facts don't matter in 2021. And now cases are once again falling. And yet still, my colleagues elsewhere in the media are badgering ministers about why we haven't already rolled out Plan B, which, by the way, is a plan for further societal, health and financial damage. Sir Jeremy Farrar, a top government scientist, by the way, 3 words that send a shiver down my spine, is on his way out of SAGE and he wants more measures, with cases falling. But of course, the facts don't matter. Meanwhile, the House of Commons authorities are being urged to make all MPs wear masks again. That's right, masks are coming back, folks. When is this nonsense around masks ever going to end? If you're going to mandate something like face coverings, the burden of proof is on you to demonstrate they work. Perhaps we should have another look at that graph comparing mask-free Sweden with mask-loving police state Lithuania. Here it is. I never tire of seeing this graph. There you go, Lithuania in black, with cases through the roof. Sweden, cases flatlining. Sweden, no lost businesses, no closed schools, no lockdowns, no social distancing, no mask mandates. Meanwhile, Lithuania has one of the strictest vaccine passport systems in the world, second only to China. I love that graph. I might get a tattoo of it made at some point. Florida lifted their mask mandate months ago. It was called Neanderthal thinking by Joe Biden, and cases fell. Florida now have among the lowest number of cases in America, but their governor was called Ron Death Santist. And yet, still, you have examples of the ongoing insanity from our American cousins right here. Check this out. There you go. What a magical family Christmas that is. Tell me it's not a cult. Tell me it's not a religion. Now let me burden you with a few more facts. Former SAGE advisor Dr. Colin Axon, an engineer and an expert on the transmission of aerosol particles, told me on this programme that masks are nothing more than a comfort blanket entrenching bad behaviour. That's right, entrenching bad behaviour. He would not recommend them at all. That was his opinion. Well, on masks, what about Peru, whose mask mandate was so strict that police ordered anybody caught not wearing a mask to dig a grave for those who had died of COVID? That is an actual fact. Well, where are they on the global league table of COVID deaths at the moment? Let's take a look. Oh dear, they're at the very top. That's right, Peru has the highest per capita death rate from COVID in the world. So disappointing. I thought the masks were fantastic and saved lives. The fact that members of the scientific community, the political establishment and the media are pushing for debatable measures like this at a time when cases are falling tells you everything you need to know. They don't want this to end and they want to control you. That's why in 2021 the facts don't matter. They never did. It's not a conspiracy theory. We've lived through this madness, which makes it far from a conspiracy and very real indeed. And I will take no lectures from many television celebrity GPs. You'll see them, they're 10 a penny, urging Plan B restrictions. However, GPs closed their doors in the course of the pandemic. They literally chained the gates of their surgeries shut. And the NHS as a whole simply ignored other illnesses. I know you've told me your stories, each and every one heartbreaking. For too long, the message from the NHS was, if it's not COVID, we don't care. That's been the culture for the last 18 months. Now, I've always given the Prime Minister credit for Freedom Day on the 19th of July, and it's important now that the politics once again trump the so-called science, whose modelling has badly failed. The science, a partisan, narrow and unchallenged opinion of some experts, but not all. The science has left us a poorer, sicker, more divided country with one of the highest COVID death tolls in the world. So it doesn't look like these ruinous measures did much good. But many want to sign us up for months more of this, possibly years, which is unforgivable, given that we can now see the damage that has been done. The war on COVID is one that we have lost. And there has, in my view, been too much collateral damage along the way. Damaged lives, a wrecked economy, a 12 million long NHS waiting list, and a soaring non-COVID death toll. So this war on COVID must end, and it must never be started again. Well, it should have ended in May 2020, when it was clear that 3 weeks did not flatten the curve. In the end, although resolutely ignored by policymakers and so-called experts, the facts will ultimately prevail. Professor Jay Bhattacharya calls lockdowns the biggest public health mistake in history, and he is one of the most respected and decorated medics on the planet from Stanford Medical School in California. The penny will drop among the public. It's happening already. In spite of the fear-mongering, which in my view is what mask mandates are all about, the people will realise what we've done and how horribly wrong all of this was. And it will be your will and your determination that brings this ideological, highly politicised anti-science nightmare to an end. And that, let me tell you, is a fact. This is GB News.